to call the meeting to order. We are just a few minutes late. We have quorum. We have some interruptions that have been happening today with votes, and it is under some illusion that we're not done with the voting yet. So, if everyone agrees and we have quorum, I think we'll just start into the meeting. Pursuant to Standing Order 81-4, main estimates 2015-16, votes 1, 5, and 10. Under the Agriculture and Agri-Food, vote 1. Under the Canadian Dairy Commission, vote 1. Under the Canadian Grain Commission, referred to the committee on Tuesday, February the 24th, 2015. Colleagues, we have with us today, and we welcome the Honourable Jerry Ritz, Minister of Agriculture and Agriculture Food. I thank you, Minister, for being with us today. What I wanted to do is that, without any further ado, I want to give the Minister the opportunity for his opening comments, and then we will see what happens with that in terms of when the bells are going to ring. So, Minister, your opening statement, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Today I have with me Deputy Minister Andrea Lyon, Assistant Deputy Ministers Greg Meredith, Pierre Corriveau, and of course Paul Mayers with the CFIA. It's been a busy time in Canadian agriculture since we last met. We've had the Canada-Korea Free Trade Agreement coming into force on January 1 of this year, the passage of the Agricultural Growth Act, and a very successful trade mission with Canadian industry to Southeast Asia in March. Just 2 weeks ago, we announced the CWB had reached a strategic partnership to secure the resources they need to become an independent, strong, and global competitor in the grain sector. This agreement with G3 Global Grain Group is expected to increase Canada's grain export capacity, adding hundreds of jobs and hundreds of millions of dollars of economic growth across the prairies. The stronger CWB unit will continue to offer farmers an opportunity to build equity in this new company simply by continuing to deliver their grain. With, with this agreement, our government has fully delivered on our commitment to marketing freedom by increasing marketing choice for Western Canadian grain farmers, as well as keeping the CWB as a strong, viable option for farmers. As I said in Winnipeg, this announcement is a win for Canada's producers and a win for Canada's economy. Agriculture continues to drive the Canadian economy. Of course, the main estimates are always about looking ahead. When we do so, we see a bright future for this great, dynamic sector. Demand is growing around the world for the high-quality food that our Canadian farmers and food processors continue to deliver. To allow them to capture that demand, we've sharpened the focus on strategic investments that promote innovation, competitiveness, and market development initiatives while continuing to proactively manage their risk. The estimates you have before you reflect this transformational change. Powered by a $3 billion funding envelope over 5 years, Growing Forward 2 is really moving the goal sticks, driving our economy and the sustainability of the sector overall. A great example of this is the Agri-Risk Initiative, or ARI. This is a new tool introduced under Growing Forward 2. Rather than taking action after the fact, the idea is to get out front and centre and support bankable, predictable insurance tools that producers can use to proactively manage their risk. A number of initiatives are already in place, including livestock price insurance implemented in the western provinces of Saskatchewan, Alberta, and British Columbia, who bought on. At last count, cattle producers there have insured close to 1 million head, valued at $1.7 billion. Last week, our government introduced the budget, which commits a further $30 million over 2 years to grow Canada's marketing presence around the globe. This new support will help expand the activities of the Market Access Secretariat and those of the CFIA to jointly support this agricultural sector and continuing to maintain as well as expand and diversify into new markets while capitalizing on opportunities created by the trade agreements we're signing. This will also include a new agricultural trade commissioners and a more proactive role in setting international science-based standards. The funding will also help expand our successful agri-marketing program to help farmers to further enhance marketing capacity at home and abroad. To help the new generation of farmers take our industry into the future, the budget also increases the lifetime capital gains exemption from $800,000 to $1 million. On average, a farmer will save some $27,000 when selling a property valued at that $1 million plus mark. This measure will ease the tax burden as our aging producers considering retirement pass the farm to the next generation. A strong farm gate is fundamental to helping producers capture the incredible opportunities that are opening up here and abroad. That's why our government continues to push hard on the trade file to get our foot in those doors before our competitors do. Our collaborative efforts are promoting decisions that are science-based, helping Canadian producers to export more product and overall grow the economy. Last year, Canada's agriculture and food exports hit a new record of $56.4 billion. We continue to deliver on our government's aggressive trade agreement strategy. Since 2006, this government has successfully concluded negotiations on free trade agreements with 38 countries while having ongoing negotiations with another 32. Today, Canada has concluded trade agreements with countries representing close to half of the world's agriculture and agri-food marketplace. Our historic trade agreements with Korea and the European Union will open the doors to two vitally important markets on two different continents. On January the 1st, the Canadian-Korea trade agreement came into place. This agreement will level the playing field for our exporters in this key market, eliminating tariffs on our canola, beef, pork, and grains. Upon implementation of the agreement with the EU, Canada will be one of the only developed countries in the world to have preferential access to the world's two largest economies, the EU and, of course, the United States. Industry has estimated that this agreement will increase Canadian agriculture and agri-food exports to the EU by some $1.5 billion a year. We're also working hard to create a new trade opportunity through our ongoing participation in negotiations for the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Of course, when it comes to enhancing our trade routes, we must practice what we preach here at home as well. And I certainly applaud the work that this committee is doing on interprovincial trade barriers and ask that the report, the recommendations you table, be strong. Transport is a key pillar of our government's strategy to build a modern grain industry that's equipped to compete in the global marketplace. We continue to build a modern grain industry with ongoing reform of the Canadian Grain Commission. We introduced Bill C-48, the Modernization of Canada's Grain Industry Act, building on changes we passed in 2012 to streamline and modernize the operations of the CGC and reduce the regulatory burden for grain producers. C-48 will enhance producer protection, grain quality and safety assurance while further streamlining the operations overall of the CGC. While parliamentary gains from the NDP are stopping this bill from reaching committee, the government remains committed to advancing this important legislation. As well as trade and transportation, farmers need research and innovation to compete in the global marketplace. In today's environment, collaboration is key. That's why we're building on our very successful research cluster model. We almost doubled our investments in these clusters under GF2, as well as adding 4 new ones. Those investments of $127 million have leveraged $60 million in industry investments. GF2 is also driving innovation through industry-led R&D, agri-science projects and funds to help get great ideas off the drawing board and into the marketplace. There's also the cost-shared innovation projects with the provinces and territories, and of course our world-class scientists who continue to deliver new ideas and tools to advance the sector. A key catalyst for innovation is the Agricultural Growth Act, which received royal assent about 2 months ago. C-18 will drive innovation by strengthening intellectual property rights for plant breeders so Canadian producers can and will have the best possible varieties available. At the same time, farmers retain the right to save, clean and store seed for their own operation. C-18 will level the playing field for our producers and will encourage foreign breeders to release their varieties into Canada much sooner. We've already seen the results with Bayer Crop Science announcing a $10 million investment in Canadian cereal crop breeding. C-18 also brings innovation to our delivery of the Advanced Payments Program, giving farmers a more flexible tool to manage their cash flows while cutting red tape and improving efficiencies. Also, to speed up the innovation pipeline, we're modernizing the variety registration system to help seed companies get farmers the tools they need to compete faster and more efficiently. I'm confident these reforms will take down barriers to innovation while continuing to support our high-quality Canadian brand in the world markets. Mr. Chair, all of this is great news for Canada's agriculture and food sector and for Canada's economy. The future is bright for this dynamic industry. The Department's economic outlook points to a strong future for the agricultural sector, with Canadian farmers' incomes and balance sheets at record levels. Agriculture has become more global in focus, more outward-looking, and much more confident. The credit for that goes to a new generation of farmers, processors, and other business people who have stepped up to the challenges of feeding a hungry world. Our job as government, Mr. Chair, and mine as Minister, has been to clear the road for that to happen. We've come a long way, but there's always work to be done. We're now starting to look at what the next generation of agricultural framework will look like. Powered by an aggressive trade and innovation agenda, we'll continue to drive transformational change throughout this core economic sector to reap a bumper harvest for Canada's economy. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I look forward to any questions and comments the panel may have.
Thank you very much, Minister, and as always, pretty precise and straightforward, and appreciate that. All of us do. I want to introduce to everyone on the committee also the witnesses that are here to support. Andrea Lyon, Deputy Minister. Welcome, Deputy Minister, to the panel. Mr. Greg Meredith, Assistant Deputy Minister, Strategic Policy Branch. Pierre Corbeau, Assistant Deputy Minister of Corporate Management Branch, and then also from CFIA, Paul Mayers, Vice President, Policy and Programs. Welcome to each of you, and now we'll start the rounds of 5 minutes, and we'll start with Mr. Allen. 5 minutes from the NDP, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's always nice to see you, Minister, and of course the rest of your department who are here with you today. If we could, Minister, you mentioned the CWB in your remarks. If we could explore some of that in the sense of the understanding is, at least, and it's hard to understand it because we're on the outside and we don't necessarily have enough information, it seems. Did we sell the CWB or did we just transfer the assets to G3?
Neither. They've taken on a partnership called G3. The assets of the CWB are still there working for farmers under the new entity. It's a partnership between G3, which is a Canadian registered company, made up of Bunge and Salic, which owns 50.1%, and 49.9% will be owned by the Farmers Trust under the CWB.
So when you say neither, does that mean the government still has a controlling interest in the CWB? Because presently you do now.
Not at all. It's now a private sector entity. Taxpayers no longer backstop or guarantee the workings of the CWB as they did during the single desk era.
So would you not agree then that you've actually done something like maybe move it to someone else away from your control?
Oh, absolutely. They now will answer to farmers much more directly than they ever will as an arm's length to the government.
So can you tell us what role the directors that were appointed by you would have played in the decision, or who played roles in the decision about choosing G3?
The directors themselves of the CWB, they were in charge of the end game. They hired the audit firm Deloitte as well as a legal team to ascertain which was the right partner moving forward. They had some 52 different entities, including Farmers of North America, put forward ideas. The unfortunate part with the FNA proposal was it didn't come with any dollars or any kind of plan attached. What they were shopping for, and the outline they had put forward, was someone who had the ability to capitalize, someone who had the logistics capacity and the ability to expand the footprint of CWB across Canada, not just in Western Canada anymore, as well as build port capacity both east and west coasts.
So if memory serves me correctly, did we not as Canadian taxpayers put $300 million up as a backstop at some point when CWB was changed with the legislation? Is that correct?
Yes. In order to keep the CWB viable, they needed a foundation of taxpayers' money to pay down the pension demands that were there, pay off the bills that were against the building, the rail cars. There was a small down payment made on 2 boats that had to be paid out. So there's a number of things that were needed in order to keep the CWB whole so they could move forward. The chair's going
to cut me off, so the last question obviously would be in this particular aspect. Did the Canadian taxpayer get any money back from this transaction?
Well, they will with the economic driver that the CWB will become.
No, I'm not looking down the road. Did they actually get any money from
There's
G3?
different ways to collect tax and so on, Mr. Allen. Certainly over time, they will see that money returned.
Well, that's
in the
like me
economic
buying
driver
a house, Mr.
that
Speaker,
Canada will
from
become.
Mr. Dreeshen and saying I'm going to pay his property taxes. I mean, if I buy a property, I actually pay for it. If I say, well, you'll get your money back at some point in time because I'll continue to pay the property taxes. What I'm asking you is, did G3 write a check to the Canadian government and say, here's some of your money back?
Well, that was never
$300 million bucks.
That was never part of it, Mr. Allen. And I guess it would be like the money that your party owes the Canadian taxpayer for these offices you put together and so on. When will we see that back? Over time, probably.
I didn't realize that was part of the Agriculture Committee, but I guess that's part of your report.
Well, you used an analogy, so did I.
So at the end of the day, I guess the question still remains: did they pay any money back to the Canadian taxpayer? Yes or no? That's kind of simple.
No, not directly. Indirectly, they will. Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate the candor, Minister.
Yep.
So can you update what kind of remuneration would have went to either the board of directors or those who were left running the CWB, who by indications will only be there for a short period of time before they move on?
The transition should be complete early July is the number I think that the G3 and the CWB are looking at. I haven't been privy to that. At the end of the day, then the directors that are there now aren't eligible to move on to be part of the new entity. They actually stop.
So will they receive some form of severance or reward actually for their role in any of this? Because you've said they've made the decision. So is there remuneration for them for doing what they've just done, which is basically hand over to CWB?
Not from my department, not from Canadian taxpayers, no.
Is there any from the other entity called G3?
I have no idea what the other entity will do. They're a private sector entity. I don't know what agreements they have. I don't.
Except the folks who are there now are part of a Crown corporation.
Sorry?
They're part of a Crown, the folks that are there now. Right now, at the moment,
it's
part of a
it's
Crown.
not even a Crown. It's an arm's length holding of government, but it's not even considered a Crown. It's an anomaly.
But they report to you.
Thank you very much.
They don't anymore.
Thank you very much, Mr. Allen. Time is up, and now we'll go to Mr. Dreesen of the Conservatives for 5 minutes, please.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and to the Minister and all of your folks from the department. Certainly, thank you for being here. As a grain farmer, there was no prouder moment than we delivered the first loads of Freedom wheat to our local elevator, and it was made possible, of course, by our government's Marketing Freedom for Western Grain Farmers Act, and the support of this majority of grain farmers, and the government made it a priority to make marketing freedom to farmers as it went through the dismantling of the Canadian Wheat Board's single desk monopoly. And also, as anticipated, we finally saw this commercialization of the Canadian Wheat Board earlier this month. In the main estimates, there's a $24 million especially allocated to the Canadian Wheat Board transition program. I'm just wondering if you can go over that in some detail, and certainly if you can tell us just what this actually does mean to farmers.
Well, it's a tremendous opportunity for farmers to continue to market. I mean, they've shown us expertise in marketing their canola and special crops, everything outside of the old single desk over the years. In fact, the intransigence of the board over the years actually gave rise to a growing and dynamic canola sector and the special crop sector, which probably wouldn't have had as big a footprint today as they do, simply because the wheat board wouldn't allow changes to be made on the wheat, durum, and barley front. Having said that, everyone I talk to now, we're actually starting to see more wheat grown. We had actually lost close to some 5 million acres of production in the last few years of the single desk as farmers moved away to other rotational crops. That's one of the reasons that we're spending a tremendous amount of money and energy on wheat varieties now, because there's a growing demand to get back into something that's more saleable to the world out there. The Wheat Board always held up Warburton's mills in Great Britain as their poster child for how everything worked well under the single desk. One of the first calls I got when we went public with the change that we were going to make to the single desk was from Warburton saying, "Thank God you're doing that, because we were about to move all of our buys to Australia." The Wheat Board would not sell us what we wanted. They kept selling us what they had and not looking at us as a customer and selling us what we were requiring. Warburton's now contracted last year thousands of acres of cropland across Western Canada to grow the varieties that they want and need. So there are tremendous success stories out there with those changes. So farmers have embraced it. There are still a few. There were a couple wandering around here yesterday saying how terrible this is for their enterprises. They're talking in terms of losing tens of thousands. If they are, agri-stability will kick in. But I haven't seen that, so I think they're blowing a little smoke.
Thanks. I guess the other aspect, of course, is we've heard about farmers getting older, retirement, and
You and I.
Yes, I know. Yes. But it's a case of having your life savings in your farm,
Yep.
and as far as pension plans and all of those other types of things. But that's where your retirement is, and of course I think when we talk about the expanded lifetime capital gains exemption for farmers, it goes a long ways in helping succession planning, looking at children and grandchildren being able to take over the farm. And I know that we've talked about that, and as you mentioned in your comments earlier about this being in Budget 2015, I just wonder if you could perhaps a little bit more specifically provide the details regarding the lifetime capital gains exemption for farmers, how it's going to be implemented, how it's going to work out for them.
Well, when we first took government in 2006, the capital gains exemption stood at $500,000. And of course, over that last 9 years now, we've seen a tremendous growth in the value of farmland as well as the farm entity itself. So there's going to be some capital gain recaptured. So we first changed it to $750,000, then we indexed it, so it's sitting around 813 and change, I think, if I remember the number correctly. But now we've moved it to the $1 million mark, which is reflective of the increases that we've seen in the farm. Most of the farms out in our country are well north of that $1 million value. I've seen several that were sold for $20 million plus. So it does make a significant difference on the bottom line when farmers decide to sell out. It certainly helps pave the way so that the next generation can pay a little less from dad, if at all possible, and dad's still got enough, dad and mom's still got enough to retire on, in the lifestyle of their choice. So it's just one of those things that government can and should do, just every once in a while, to bring things up to current status. That's why our programs at Ag Canada evolve. Farming has changed drastically in the last 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. So it's only right that our programming changes as well, including our tax programming.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dreesen. And now I want to welcome Mr. McKay from the Liberal Party for joining our committee. Mr. McKay, 5 minutes, please.
Well, I may be joining you today, but it won't be permanent. Mr. Eiking has been talking to quite a number of farmers over the last few months, and one of the issues that keeps coming up is the business risk management program, which many farmers are describing as complicated, unpredictable, and inadequate. And when I look at the Library of Parliament's breakdown of your various programs, I take note that in 2009-10 it was $1.5 billion, and now it's down to $1.280 billion, about a 15% cut. So,
correction, John, these are demand-driven programs, so there's no cut. If the demand is there, the programs balloon. They could go north of $2 billion if they were required. So there's a line item that says here's agri-stability, and as the demand increases, so does the dollar. And if the demand isn't there, as it hasn't been in the last couple of years, with the markets delivering, then of course the payments go down.
well, it's a curious juxtaposition then between, so you started at 1.5, you're down 1.28. You're saying that's because of the market's in effect taking care of the risk, which can only be to the good. Having said that, then why would Mr. Eiking be hearing about a program that is complicated, unpredictable, and inadequate? Those two thoughts don't live in the same universe.
Sure. Most of the provinces deliver the programming themselves, so the administration is theirs. We as a department deliver Manitoba and Atlantic Canada. Every other province delivers their own, and they all have little tweaks and twists. At the end of the day, there's more work being done, as I said, on agri-insurance, because it's more bankable and predictable than agri-stability or agri-recovery, which is the disaster component. The problem that we always heard from farm groups on agri-stability was as you rightly point out, the twists and turns and how to make it work, and it's not as bankable and predictable as insurance is. So that's why, as a government, we've been working with the provinces at shared jurisdiction to move more and more programming to an insurance risk base. That way it's bankable and predictable. At the end of the day, we're now seeing that happening in the livestock sector, which is much better. We're also seeing our crop insurance programming starting to cover things like unseeded acres and other issues that weren't covered before that agri-stability had to pick up. We're trying to make this as predictable as we possibly can for farmers so that they know what they're up against every year.
So if you're moving it to an insurance-based model, how will that, as a farmer who wishes to draw, how will that be different than what business risk management looks like? What will be the difference in the program form? I
would start out by saying a farmer doesn't wish to draw catastrophe, but certainly if something like that happens, whether it's market-driven or weather-driven, they want to know that they have coverage, and they want to know what the parameters are of that coverage so they can fill it into their business line to get lines of credit at the bank and so on. So we're doing that. We're trying to keep things as bankable as we possibly can so that the lending institutions understand that this farmer has coverage to this level and the line of credit then can be applied to it. The most significant change that was made to agri-stability was farmers coming to us and saying, using this global average as we do where the high and the low year are left out of the 5-year and then the middle term is the average, the folks that need this year after year, have hailstorms 2 years in a row, are losing out. So what we did is make the adjustment to draw down the overall coverage of agri-stability from 85% coverage to 70%, at the same time bringing up the negative margin coverage into that same vein. So the people that needed it more actually got coverage, and those that weren't claiming it really didn't lose anything, because whether they got 70% or 85% of a non-claim didn't really matter.
No. Now, where then, for the interest of members who are going to be asked to vote shortly, where is that, if you will, I was going to say it's a replacement program. It's not really a replacement program. It's a
program.
It's a what?
It's a companion program. There are several fronts in the business risk management, or BRM, suite of programming. Agri-Invest, where farmers put in 1% of their net and we match it. They can put in any amount they want, but we only match the first 1%. That gives them money for a rainy day to take out the small bumps and hurdles as they move forward. Most farmers look at that as a retirement program as opposed to leveling out the small bumps. The trick with that is we've changed the trigger, so it's much more user-friendly than it used to be. Then you have agri-stability, which is one of the major programs, and it's driven by market interruptions or weather-related issues that aren't covered by crop insurance. Crop insurance is the mainstay for most people, and there never was an insurance-based product for livestock, so now we have one under the agri-insurance envelope that Saskatchewan, British Columbia, and Alberta, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and British Columbia have endorsed. They said about 1 million head covered to a value of about $1.7 billion. Manitoba is looking at one for hogs based more on a hedging guarantee, and we're looking at how we implement that as well. So everybody's...
The disadvantage...
Thank you very much, Mr. McKay. We're well over time. And now I'm going to go to Mr. McGuire. Please, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I want to be the second one on this side to congratulate the Minister on the changes that he just was talking about in regards to the wheat board, and the changes will lead to more marketing options and choices for farmers across the prairies, at least anyway. And with that, there's growing market opportunities, and that's more important than ever. And so in the budget, there's some main items in the estimates here, $194 million, that I see under the lines of market access, negotiation, sector competitiveness, assurance systems, and a portion of those fundings is going to open up new markets in the world. We've signed 38 new trade agreements, more than any government in history, and I wanted to just ask you how these agreements are going to benefit the multiple industries, particularly in agriculture, that will be affected by it, and can you just inform our committee on how the access to these new markets will impact our Canadian agriculture sectors?
Well, trade is the mainstay of Canada. I mean, we have a large ability to produce and a small population to consume. So we export between 50 and 90% of commodities, depending on what they are. 50% of our pork goes out, and 85-90% of our canola goes out, and then it varies. But at the same time that we export that volume, we also import 50% of what we consume. Now, different numbers, different values, but at the end of the day, we're a trading nation by design. And the whole point of a trading nation is being able to have markets to ship those goods to. You need more than one bidder on your product in order to keep our major trading partners. The U.S. always has been, probably always will be. But at the end of the day, having the ability to ship livestock now into Japan, Korea, China, India, different things like that, grains and oilseeds, rather than just south into the American market, certainly has brought the value up. And we've all seen that with the price of beef. As it's climbed, as a growing need for protein or demand for protein around the world. So we need to facilitate that. And it takes boots on the ground, a market access secretariat, which is being added to in this budget, the ability for trade commissioners to work with all of the provinces now that are getting on that trade bandwagon. Ontario just got back from a trip to China. Good things happening over there. It's all good. But you need coordination to make all of that work. We don't just need people storming the beaches in China. We actually need them, in an orderly way doing it so that we don't have gaps and overlaps. And that's what these trade commissioners do. We also have the ability now to have agriculturally dedicated people embedded in the embassies, in the markets that are most important to us, as well as a lot of Paul's colleagues at the CFIA. And we found that extremely helpful with the latest BSE case. Our eminent veterinarian on BSE is a guy named Dr. Gary Little, who's actually stationed in Tokyo. This time around, we didn't see an interruption in the market in Japan at all. In fact, Japan accepted some 28 containers that were on the water headed to Korea that they said, wait a minute, give us time to assess this. They were swung and purchased in Japan. So tremendous work that these people, men and women, do on the ground for us in that regard. And that's why you see that reflected in the budget.
Thank you very much. You know, one of the other impacts that comes from these changes that I kind of lobbied for, as you did all of my life as well, was that with these changes comes the opportunity for more processing right here in Western Canada and changing the value of the product, changing the type of product that we have. It requires a lot of heavy investment from many companies, farm organizations or smaller groups that may not be able to just jump out and be able to put out the cash to do it all. Our $70 million that you've got in the main estimates here in the Growing Industry Canada capacity is an opportunity for them to be able to utilize that, and I wonder if you can just explain how that funding is going to affect the processing industry here in Western Canada. And I mean, it's not just the West. This impact is going to be across all of Canada, sure. And I'm just wondering if you can also expand on how the accelerated capital cost program that we had in the budget will affect
Sure.
this as well.
They all dovetail together. Everybody has different requirements. The biggest thing we found in the last years traveling is that we need to begin to assess these markets and sell them what they want, not what we have. You know, we enjoy a nice 10 or 12 ounce sirloin, a 16-ounce T-bone. I mean, that feeds a village in Japan. But how do you cut that up properly so you're not wasting what we have and still address that marketplace? So this allows processing facilities to retool to be specifically addressing those market asks. And that's exactly what's needed. We're just starting to reinforce this. Sell them what they want, not what we have, which means processing jobs here and the ability to recapture some of that other goods. You know, when you crush canola here, the meal stays into our livestock sector rather than just shipping seed and so on. So there's a tremendous amount of work being done to coordinate all of that so that we end up with the biggest benefit, whether it's raw materials going over that are processed there or the ability to process here right through to finished goods, cryovac in 2-ounce cuts into that market in Japan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maguire. Now we'll go to Madam Renault. 5 minutes, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Minister, in my discussions with the farmers in my area in Quebec, I've noticed that for the industries touched by supply management, it is primordial that this stay in place. This system, as you know, provides for stability and foreseeability and allows the producer to reinvest in their farms and to stimulate innovation. Compared to other systems, supply management helps the small and large producers, both. So, Mr. Minister, in a riding like mine, or Ruth-Hélène Brosseau's riding, supply management promotes economic prosperity and job creation in our regions. In Quebec, 9,000 farms, more than 62,000 jobs, and a minimum of 37% of agriculture income is affected by supply management. Supply management is effective and indispensable for the well-being of the Quebec and Canadian agricultural field, and also allows Quebecers and Canadians to have high-quality products, and it doesn't cost anything to taxpayers. Having said this, Mr. Minister, can you tell us today and reaffirm your total support for supply management and keep your promise which you made in the speech from the throne?
As a government, we've proven the value and validity of supply management as we continue to exercise free trade agreements around the world. We've done that. I consider Marcel Groslo, the head of the UPA in Quebec, a good friend. We chat from time to time on issues such as this. We did make the pledge that should there be any negativity through the producer level in these free trade agreements, like the European Union free trade agreement, they will be compensated and kept whole. And we continue to reinforce that. The discussions around the TPP are heating up, and until it actually nails down on a point, there's a lot of concern, I will say, throughout the SM sector as to what will happen at the end of the day. But they all know that as a government we have their best interests at heart, because all of us agree, all political stripes agree on the value of the SM sector to Canada.
Now, according to the report 2015-2016, some sub-programs are entirely subsidized by Growing Forward 2, but there are ministerial resources, departmental resources, and also Growing Forward 2. Is it possible for you or for your officials to identify the total amount of Growing Forward 2, which will be spent in 2015-2016. Is it possible to give us the details of this program and of the amounts involved?
I have to get back to you on that number. The Growing Forward 2 is a 5-year program, so to identify 1 year, we'd have to work with the provinces of record because some of the money is directed by them, some of it's directed by us. So some years there's overlaps, say, into Quebec, where other years there isn't quite the same. It all depends on what year they access the funds in. But we could seek to do that for, you said 2015-16. Well, we haven't done 16 yet, but we could do, and then 15 isn't finished yet. So which year would you want qualified?
With 2015-2016.
That's right, 2015-2016. Can you tell us already or forecast any figures for this program? Can you give us the details or quantify for 2015-2016 what is Growing Forward 2 going to cost?
It will be delivered in the value of the envelope that's there, but the particular breakdown, Pierre, can you quantify some of those numbers?
Alors, environ ça, si vous regardez sur les estimés.
If you look at the main estimates, the total amount we voted, which is in front of you, is about $943 million. Of this amount, approximately speaking, is about $450 million for the Growing Forward 2. So about 48% of the budget to be voted here today. And some of the elements that we can go into detail for, if you go to page 25 of the estimates, on innovation, forecasting $101 million in expenditures for Growing Forward 2. So that gives you an overall look at the important part of this budget for the department.
And I'm now going to go to Mr. Zimmer.
Mr. Chair, before we move on, does that answer your question, or are there other numbers?
Oui.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zimmer, 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, for coming today to committee. As you know, the main estimates, especially vote 1, is operating expenses for the department at $548 million, and I would suggest that's a lot of money for all of us in this room, but it's toward a good cause, I would suggest, and your ministry to back up Canadian farmers and to back up our ag and our food supply for Canada. As part of that, it's in support of the advanced payments program, as you know. But also, I'll ask a question about that following, but I wanted to also talk about, we passed various pieces of legislation that have affected the ag sector. As you know, C-18 has been a positive effect, just recently receiving royal assent. And again, another step, I think, from our government that we support the ag industry and support farmers in Canada. 2 questions, Minister. Can you please inform the committee how this legislation will assist farmers by reducing the administrative burden and cost to producers and provide greater flexibility in repayment options and simplify the delivery and ease of access to the advanced payments program?
Well, the whole thing comes down to red tape and regulation. You know, all of us having our own businesses and farms, the last thing you want to do is come in at 10 o'clock at night and start doing the paperwork. It's going to take you a couple hours when you've already put in your, 12 or 14-hour day. So we've done an assessment of all of that. We don't deliver the actual program. It's done through third parties that do that. And what we're instructing them to do is now offer other ways of repayment. So if I take a cash advance on my canola and I decide I'm not selling that, it used to be you had to sell that in order to make your repayment. Now you can actually sell another commodity that you might see the price going up on canola. You can actually hold it now and sell your wheat or your barley or something else, which you never could do before. Multiple years in one application. You know, it's your farm. Everybody's working on rotations now of 3 to 5 years, so you know exactly, barring weather-related problems, you know exactly what you're going to need as you move out there. Livestock is now going to be covered and things like that was never done before. So we're trying to make it as user-friendly and as operationally easy as we possibly can. You can go to one administrator now for everything as opposed to picking and choosing who you were going to apply through. Did I miss anything there, guys? Greg, any other points?
No, I think you've covered it all.
Right.
Yeah, I think most of us, we just met with 4-H in the other room just before this meeting, and we see the future of what our farmers are going to be for Canada, and it's nice to have programs that actually are going to help those future farmers do their job and do it more effectively.
Sure. There was some talk as we consulted, and we broadly consult with industry before we come forward with these programs, as well as our provincial partners, about doubling the program. You know, there was one group, there was canola growers basically wanted, and they're the administrators, so of course they would like to have more money to administer, and so would I. But at the end of the day, 98% of farmers are still well served within the $100,000 interest-free and the $400,000 cap. So to double it would have really only have reflected about 2%. So it wasn't worth making those changes at this point. But that's something we'll continue to consider.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Minister, for all your efforts. I know just even talking about the wheat board, we're seeing it in its last transition to being self-sustaining and part of a broader group of the market, the world market as we call it, and giving access to Canadian farmers. I know I've heard positive comments from the BC piece where I'm from, and just want to commend the ministry for making that happen and seeing that our farmers are well handled.
We just followed through on exactly what our campaign said. We would have market freedom for Western Canadian farmers as well as a strong, viable wheat board. Mm-hmm. And we see that happening now with their commercialization, privatization, partnership, whatever you want to call it, with G3.
Right. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'll move to welcome back Mr. Adamaniko, and I turn it over to you for 5 minutes, please.
Well, thank you very much, Chair. It's nice to be back at Ag Committee. It's been a little while. Before I start, Minister, I would just like to say this is probably my last time here. I know that you and I have enjoyed a respectful working relationship, and I'd like to, over the years, and I'd like to thank you for that. My questions probably won't be any surprise to you. We do differ on certain issues.
Just a second, I have the answers on page 3. Page 4.
So I'd like to pursue what Francine was talking about in regard to supply management. Your government has committed to protecting supply management. I thank you for that. We have seen, however, roughly 17,000 tons of concessions to European cheese coming into Canada, and you're saying that there will be compensation. We know that now our farmers will be competing with subsidized farmers in Europe. The TPP is coming up. We've got there's tremendous pressure, as we all know, from New Zealand, other countries, United States, to not do away with supply management, to maybe offer more concessions. My understanding would be there would be more compensation, but I'm just hoping, I'd just like to get a commitment from you that that we won't be doing this. We won't be offering any more concessions, that you've committed to protecting supply management as is, that it's not costing the taxpayer anything. We don't need to make concessions to New Zealand or other countries. They're all interested in protecting their own interests, and I'd just like a commitment from you to do that. The second topic is obviously no surprise to you also. We have two, we have the Arctic apple, we have alfalfa, which have been basically approved but have not yet been released into the environment. There is concern by farmers that this could damage them economically. We know that Argentina has certain rules that look at the economic impact before introducing new GMO varieties. Would you be willing to have, for example, a moratorium on these two commodities prior to allowing the release? We've seen concern that there could be export markets for our alfalfa pellets touch the organic industry. We've seen some contamination already across the border. And we know that the BC fruit growers are very concerned, as are organic producers, about the apple. So I'd just like to get your comments and some commitment from you to ensure that our farmers are protected as we move into this new area in the GMO area.
Sure, both good questions. We've been unequivocal, all parties. I mean, we passed unanimous motions and so on to make sure that our supply management sector continues to exist here in Canada and is vibrant and healthy. And we as a government take that very seriously in the negotiations. I've had the good fortune to be involved at those tables with the European Union and certain extent of the TPP as well. And I can tell you that this government is unequivocal in our support for SM. At the end of the day, we have to look at trade values that are balanced. Of course, we have huge trade corridor, huge trade sectors, trade-reliant sectors in this country as well. So we look at it in a holistic way, but at the same time with the eye on supply management to keep it as workable as absolutely we can. and we've proven that with the European Union. The 17,000 ton of cheese that you're talking about represents some 3.5% of domestic consumption. And in the year or so since we've had that announcement, we've seen domestic consumption starting to rise, that by the time that's fully implemented, of course, domestic consumption will be replacing that cheese that's coming in. The unknown and what cheese producers are concerned about is what will the breakdown be. If it's all high-end cheese, it's different. If it all comes in at Christmas, it's different. So there are ways to mitigate the impact of it coming all at once. You know, the variations of what qualities and quantities of cheese come at different times, and those are, you know, those will be worked out as the importers and exporters move forward on that.
Interrupt you for a sec, sorry,
Yep.
Minister. Would it not just be possible to say, that's it, we're not doing any, why work on all these different statistics and figure out compensation and all that? Just say no, that's it. Supply management exists, it served our people well, doesn't cost the taxpayers a cent. And look, we've got lots of aces in the hole when we're negotiating. We've got all sorts of commodities. We've got strength. And just say that's it. We're no more concessions. We're not going to do this in TPP. Could we not do that as a government?
Well, I think you can do anything you want as a government. At the end of the day, are you shooting yourself in the foot? You'd have to analyze that over the coming years. There's a growing sector within supply management that also recognize they've built themselves a glass ceiling when it comes to expansion. Certainly the federal government is not in charge of the quota value, quota allocations, and all those things. That's done at the provincial level. So there's a partnership in that regard. The federal government is in place to make sure there are tariff walls that can't be breached. Right now, with the dollar where it is, of course, it's easier to make sure those tariff walls are strong enough that when the dollar's at par, it does make it more difficult. And we've done that quite successfully. We've had some of the importers and exporters look for gaps and exploit them, and we as a government have put our finger in the dike, you know, as we see those types of things happening, and we'll continue to do that because they're basically cheating the system, and gaming the system a little bit. But at the end of the day, even, you know, a growing sector within the SM system themselves are saying, you know, for me to get larger, for me to have the economies of scale I need to be able to trade interprovincially, and I need to look at some export market as well. There's a you know, New Zealand, I had this discussion with Tim Grosser, their trade minister. Our SM system is not a zero-sum game or a closed shop. New Zealand has about over $100 million a year on average of dairy access to Canada. You know, we do this further processing and so on to keep our processing sector whole. So there's a whole new game plan underway, a whole new way of looking at things between the producers themselves and the processors. And we saw that as the producers identified that to address the pizza kit issue, they needed to have a world price mozzarella. And they've done that, working with processors and so forth to deliver that good. So it's like all of agriculture. There's evolution and things moving forward. So to say we're just going to close the door and so on actually would be doing a disservice. Everybody needs to look at all the options that are out there. We continue to do that. But you know, keeping in mind that our SM system is special, is working well. Every country has defensive and offensive positions, and you know that's what makes trade negotiations interesting.
Thank you very much, Minister. I hate to cut you off. The bells are going. What I would ask committee is that we have two more rounds in terms of 5 minutes to go. That we would finish those off, and then we would break. We're close to the House. So with that, if that meets everybody's agreement, great, thank you. Mr. Payne, 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, for coming in along with your officials. And I think back to the days when we talked about the Canadian Wheat Board, and I had a few farmers come into my office and were highly upset. Today, I don't have any farmers coming in that are upset. They got smiles on their faces. They can sell whatever they want, and so they're pretty happy folks because they're getting way more money than they used to get. Also, you know, Minister, you talked about certainly the international trade agreements that we put in place. So I've got ranchers, pork producers, all very, very happy with those agreements. And so I just wanted to pass that on. And certainly I do hear from the supply management folks, and they're certainly encouraged that we are continuing to make sure that that is within our scope, and we want to keep that as part of it. You probably are aware also, Minister, that we're just wrapping up a report and study on international trade barriers and over the last couple of months, and we've heard quite a number of witnesses in that regard and some of the difficulties, obviously, with the impact of trade barriers between provinces. It was interesting because some of the organizations didn't want to sort of point fingers at one group or another, one province or another, so that makes it a little much more difficult to try and get that. And I know that your ministry certainly wants to grow our Canadian agricultural industry, and I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts that what we might be doing to help move product in between provinces to get rid of some of these barriers. That would certainly be helpful.
Well, Industry Canada leads the work on the interprovincial trade barriers, and I know you guys have just completed that study, and I welcome that. I think the more we shine the light on the lost opportunities interprovincially, the more people realize that this is huge money. I know at one point we looked at a robust WTO agreement during the Uruguay round as being a benefit of some $6 billion to Canada. And at the same time, we're losing roughly that same number with the trade barriers and walls that we see interprovincially in this country. You know, if I want to buy a bottle of BC wine, I can bring it home from California, but I can't bring it home from British Columbia, which makes no sense to me at all, or you. That's why we as a government made sure that the one piece of legislation from the 20s that was still under Agri-Canada's purview, we've rescinded. So now there's really no reason for the provinces not to be able to move that product. They were hiding behind that. Some have embraced it, some have not, in the way that they think that we would have them do that. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me to do a deal with the European Union where we're going to have French, Italian, German wine coming in, and yet I still in Ontario can't go and buy a bottle of British Columbia wine. It just makes, you know, it's beyond reason. So there's certainly a tremendous amount of work to be done here, and I guess any forward-thinking province recognizes that trade within Canada is an ideal way to go. You know, there are certain parts of the country that are better at certain things than others, and we need to be able to move that product in a much more free and open way than we do. So I welcome your report, and I look forward to the recommendations you make.
Okay, and certainly I totally agree with you. And actually, I want to share my time, Mr. Chair, with Mr. McGuire.
You done?
I am done. Thank you.
Mr. McGuire.
Thank you to my colleague from Medicine Hat here as well. Just one last thing, Mr. Minister, in regards to the Wheat Board. I know G3 is a registered company in Canada. It's keeping its head office in Winnipeg. One of the benefits, I guess I would say, of the whole process that I learned the day of the announcement was that Carl Durand is the CEO of that company, and I just have to put a plug in for a local Verdun, Manitoba man that is now as the head of the CEO of the Canadian Wheat Board with G3 involved in that partnership. So. I think that I do know the family. I lived in Verdun a number of years myself, and there's still a pretty tremendous understanding of agriculture in that family in our local area.
Well, right now, the major players, they call them VCR, Viterra, Cargill, and Richardson. So this adds another major player with that kind of capacity and that kind of scope. When the Wheat Board were looking for a partner to commercialize and privatize with, of course, the criteria was one that had the expertise internationally, which Bunge G3 does, the ability to continue to expand the footprint. The Wheat Board under the transitionatory phase had bought Mission Terminal in Thunder Bay. They own that along with, I think it's Three Rivers. There's a subsidiary. They've continued to make payments on the Lakers. One is delivered and made the first run up. Got sideswiped by some ice on the run up, but it's there, it's loaded and making its first voyage back. At the same time, there were 4 new elevators under construction. 2 in Saskatchewan, 2 in Manitoba, and they continue to increase that footprint. They purchased two other facilities in Saskatchewan that are also attached to short-line rail, and I know the farmers along that are buoyed by the fact that they now have an international marketer that is a co-owner of those enterprises. So they're also committed to building another number of elevators as they assess the gaps throughout predominantly Western Canada. But Bunge themselves have a large footprint and crush capacity in the rest of Canada as well. They're well known, well respected around the world, and they'll get us into markets that right now we're not a major player in. So we look forward to that. An expanded presence at the West Coast is always good. So they have that ability.
Thank you very much, Mr. McGuire. Minister, on behalf of all of the committee and all members, I want to take the opportunity to thank you for coming out. With that, we are going to move to the votes on the main estimates, and I want to thank the department heads for coming and being that support that is sometimes needed. I think with the thoroughness of the minister that we have, obviously we see that he's very much in tune with the issues around his portfolio, and we thank you for that. And with that, we will release the witnesses, the department heads, and because we do have votes, and that will mean that you won't have to come back. So to the, and thank you again, Minister. So with that, I would have the votes on the main estimates. Shall vote 1 under the Agriculture and Agri-Food carry? Carried. Shall vote 5 under Agriculture and Agri-Food carry? On division. Shall vote 10 under Agriculture and Agri-Food carry? On division. Shall vote 1 under the Canadian Dairy Commission carry? On division. And finally, shall vote 1 under the Canadian Grain Commission carry?
On division.
Thank you. And shall I report the main estimates to the House?
If you like.
And for your information, we will try to have that happen at the first of the week. Okay? Thank you, colleagues. Meeting adjourned.